Hello, I'm Tim Fell, and it's my enormous privilege to welcome you to Stammering in the Media, an evening of impassioned debate and participatory entertainment. So thank you so much for coming along. And of course, it's all part of a rich smorgasbord of contributions this week, both here and around the world, to celebrate International Stammering Awareness Day 2021. So a bit of admin first. If you'd like to ask a question tonight, please type it into the Q&A box and we'll try and take them during the discussion. And of course, by all means, use the chat to wave to everyone and to add a comment if you'd like. We're going to record the event this evening, but it'll only show the panelists and the host. So it's not, obviously it's not going to show the audience. There is a CC box at the bottom of people's screens, which if you click will show subtitles, I think. Now they don't always work terribly well, so apologies if that doesn't work as hoped. Now, our panel host tonight has already had a frantically busy day with interviews on national and regional television. He's a musician, spoken word artist and actor. You may have seen him in Taboo, an 8-part series on the BBC. He also stars in Debris in Canada, a country where he's apparently established quite a firm footing. He's also known for his podcast, Distraction Pieces. And if you've never listened to his podcast, you are in for 414 hours of unadulterated pleasure. He's a patron, an enthusiastic supporter of Stammer. He was the voice behind last year's video, It's How We Talk. He is the inimitable Scroobius Pip.
What an amazing introduction. Thank you very much, Tim. It's always, and welcome everyone. As said, the chat box is open and I'm going to throw some questions out to you all to try and get some interaction. But as a general rule, I would say if you are using the closed caption, the subtitles, let us know if they get anything hilariously wrong, because when I use those on my Instagram, because I've got a ridiculous name, it's always a bet of what they're going to think I'm saying or wanting to say when I say Scroobius Pip. So I'm going to ask you guys some questions, but before we do, I'm going to introduce the panelists, and I'm really excited to talk to everyone here today. So starting off, we've got Lydia Campbell, who on her Twitter describes herself as a journalist at BT Sport, a graduate of the University of Glasgow and a suffering Fulham FC fan. And she recently conducted an amazing interview with the former Scotland rugby captain and coach, Kelly Brown. And she's a fellow stammerer and a Stammer patron. So hello, Lydia, how are you?
I'm good. Very happy to be here. I was going to say about the subtitles, being from Northern Ireland, it will definitely get mine wrong. So yeah, I wouldn't take anything they say that seriously.
There's a variation of accents, and we've all got stammers, so it's the subtitle machine is up against it. To be fair, so fair play to them. Next up, we've got Paul Roberts, and Paul is an engineering manager who stammers openly at work and in life. He's an active member of both Stammer and local support groups, has hosted webinars and presentations about stammering in the workplace. But the bit I'm most excited about is he did a voiceover for the amazing new Not Just One Day video, which they played a clip of ahead of the ITV chat I had earlier today. Yeah. How are you, Paul?
I'm excellent, thank you very much. I'm really made up to have been asked to do the voiceover for the Not Just One Day. Fantastic video, and it was really unusual to be in the recording studio, but very, very a lot of fun.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I can't wait to talk about everything today. We've got two more guests, and next up is Rhian Binns, a PR and communications manager, and a new STAMMA trustee who, in her trustee nomination form, wrote, "I started this journey of campaigning to raise awareness of stammering when I was laughed at by Costa Coffee staff when ordering, and tweeted to raise awareness." And I think that's something that all of us can relate to. And it's kind of, whilst the current campaign is about representation on TV and radio and film, the point of that is for all of us in our day-to-day life to not feel that it's this unusual thing or to be laughed at. So yeah, it's a wonderful one. How are you, Rhian?
Hi, yeah, I'm really well. Thank you. I'm from Yorkshire, so these subtitles will definitely get something wrong. And half of the time it says my name's Ryan as well. So yeah, just it's going to be a challenge with stammers and accents and
it
names.
It really is.
So
apparently,
I really feel for you.
Apparently, it's already thrown up Screw versus Pip as my name, so it's going well already. Lastly, but definitely not least, we've got Chantel Anderson, who believes her experience within the civil service, volunteering in the Army Cadets and the Maguire programme will stand her in good stead as she starts the 3-year stint as a trustee. She's particularly hopes to be involved in working with young people who stammer. So great to have you, Chantel. How are you?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, thank you. I feel super honoured to have been elected as a trustee and to have the chance to speak this evening. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into the discussion this evening.
Excellent. And I mean, I already need to compliment all of you on your Zoom etiquette. We're all putting ourselves on mute when we're not talking. This is next level. We got a bunch of professionals here, ladies and gentlemen. So before we get into our panel discussion, I want to ask you guys who are watching and attending, what do you think? So the first question, I'd like you to pop your answers in the chat box. Put in the chat box your earliest memories of seeing someone stammer on TV. While you're typing, I'll say that mine was, I was unlucky enough. I'm 40, so I was unlucky enough to be at school when the Fresh Prince, Will Smith, had Boom Shake the Room that had a verse that had a mock stammering. So everyone in my school would regularly rap that at me, obviously. I mean, we're getting loads of answers already. Jane is saying One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Amazing film, not necessarily the most flattering at points. Phoebe Holmes, A Fish Called Wanda. Yep, definitely. Ronnie Barker from Mandy Taylor there, 100%. Katie Toolman, Gareth Gates, and Chloe De Silva saying the same there. Gareth Gates was a real one, again, of my age, it was the first time I'd seen someone who wasn't a character, if you know what I mean. It was an actual person, an actual real stuttering human. Do any of you guys remember Gareth Gates? Some of them, yeah. That was a strange one.
I'm gonna show my age a little bit here, but there was a stutter rap by Morris Minor and the Majors. I don't know if anybody remembers that.
Yes.
That was a bit of a traumatic time.
I remember that, and I remember Max Headroom as well. That was kind of a digital guy, but it was a stutter, and that was another one. We got more in the chat. A Fish Called Wanda, and my mum laughed. Yeah, understandably. Simon Dado there. Lynne Mackie, Porky Pig. Yeah, I completely. You've said that, though I don't know if I realised fully what it was. Exactly the same. Obviously that was a stammer, but it was so characterized, I guess, that it didn't. Yeah, that's kind of been a light bulb for me there. Getting loads here. Michael Palin, that song as well, 19. Yep, I remember that one. Not until the King's Speech was released, a Jazz Morton. I was really excited about the King's Speech, but I didn't go and see it in the cinema because I thought it was too obvious to walk up to the counter and ask for a ticket and stammer. I was like, I'll wait until it comes out on DVD and then I'll watch it privately at home. More shouts for opening all hours and Fish Called Wanda. Patrick Campbell. Yeah, the 19th song was by Paul Hardcastle. It made school life not very pleasant. I understand that. Patrick Campbell in Call My Bluff many years ago. Yep, more shouts for Call My Bluff. Gareth Gates. King's Speech again. I remember everyone in school bringing up Gareth Gates to me and asking why I couldn't just sing everything. Again, completely valid point, because it was a weird one, because it was a real moment of exposure, but it was his sob story, which is not necessarily the representation or the only representation that we want in these situations. But yeah, I remember that, the amazingness of, but when he sings, he's so free and fluid. It's like, I don't live in a musical. I live in Essex. I don't want to go to school and start singing at people. I'll get that.
The Gareth Gates person, that was a real life person. A lot of these others we're talking about were characters. You know, you mentioned Matt's Headroom.
Yeah.
The songs. I think Gareth Gates is one of the first real people that stammered in life.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. We've got Pick Up a Penguin. Yeah, I remember that well. Scatman John. Loads of amazing answers here. I'm going to ask another question. I'm taking too long on all of this. Put in the chat box your most recent memories of seeing someone on TV with a stammer. So someone, or to lead us into that, Steve Liggett has said Educating Yorkshire was a more recent one, and that was one that the amount of people who sent me the clip to that as soon as the clip went online, and I watched it stonily going, you know, whatever. Within moments I was in tears. It was so beautiful. I was so moved, but I went in like, all right, everyone's sending me this because I'm the friend who's got a stammer. But yeah, absolutely beautiful. Bridgerton, Lydia Campbell, yep, that's a perfect one. On BBC Lifeline, Mandy Taylor as well. Screw versus Pip on ITV, yep, 100%. Bridgerton, again, a lot coming up with Bridgerton, and we'll talk about that a lot shortly. Lots of great Stammer-related folk, yep. So many great people there. So we're going to do some polls as well. So the first poll is, have you seen our Not Just One Day advert? And I've been assured that George knows how this will all work, and the poll will appear and you'll be able to vote, and he'll be able to, oh, here we go, look. It's popped up. Question 1. Have you seen our Not Just One Day video? If you click your vote, either away there. We're not allowed to vote, but just spoiler, I have seen it, and I have it on good authority that Paul has seen it as well. So our votes would only sway it in one direction, I think. How's that all coming along? Is everyone voting there? Another shout, the President of the United States of America in his inauguration speech. Yeah, that's a great one. So we've got 53% have, and 41% haven't, and 6% aren't sure. Let's go on to the next poll. Let me go. Are you a member of Stammer? Again, there's a good reason all of us can't vote, because that's quite obvious what our answers would be and where we would land. So if you want to click your votes in there. It's not a trap either. You're not going to get kicked out if you click that you're not. 74% are, 20% aren't, and 6% can't remember. I mean, you should know that really, but it's fine. Great answers there. Next one: Are recent media portrayals overall more sympathetic or authentic? because again, a lot of the ones that we were bringing up from the past there, we were all bringing up with cringing faces as we were discussing them on the panel, at least. So are they more sympathetic? Maybe a little bit more. They're the same. They've always been. They're worse than they used to be, or not sure.
Pip, can I jump in there? It's just sprung to mind. I wonder, we're all bringing up the ones that made us cringe and the one that give us bad memories. I wonder if they're the ones that we remember for that very reason.
Yeah.
I wonder if there were some positive ones, but we don't remember them so much.
Well, the votes are saying that 17% are saying they're more sympathetic and authentic. Some 53%, maybe a little more. 19% the same as they've ever been. 2% worse, and 9% I'm not sure. And that's the most valid I'm not sure, because that's to your point there. It's a tough one. Maybe they're the ones that we remember because they were traumatic. Next one, we've got two more. Should someone who is fluent portray someone who stammers? Now, this is an interesting question, because as an actor, if we all vote that they definitely shouldn't, then that could be a lot more work for me. But I don't actually believe that. We'll discuss the ins and outs of that as the night goes on. So here we've got, yeah, that's fine. Maybe it depends. I don't know. I'm not sure they should, or they definitely shouldn't. Should someone who's fluent portray someone who stammers on TV or film, or should all the stammering roles go to Scroobius Pip? Screw versus Pip. So we've got 12% say yes, it's fine. 46% maybe, it depends. 6% I don't know. 19% I'm not sure they should, and 17% they definitely shouldn't. I feel that's probably the most varied response that we've had so far, or the biggest spread at least. So we'll have one more before we get onto the panel. Is it realistic to have people who stammer regularly on TV, radio, and film? Of course it is. I think so. I'm not sure, or it's unrealistic. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about, I guess. So it's good to get a gauge of where we sit at the start, and then we'll jump back with these questions at the end and see what we think. So, of course, it is a 62%. That's great. I think so. 30%. I'm not sure. 6% and 2% feeling it's unrealistic. Again, on all of these polls, no wrong answers at all. I think it's really. It's a complex discussion, so we'll get into that. So there were numerous mentions of Bridgerton there. We're going to play an amazing clip quickly from Lynne Mackie's wonderful video that she did analysing Bridgerton, and she talks about why she's done this analysis. We're not going to show the whole video because it's long, but I highly recommend you looking it up afterwards. But for now, George will play the explanation as to why.
With the stutter, I'm not asking for too much. I just want you to give me something like so that people who don't stutter don't think we can be cured by trying hard enough. Is that too much to ask? Please. I'm aware that a lot of people are intelligent enough to know that not like a whole group is represented by one person. However, that does not stop it from happening. Like, you see stuff like the film Split, like what it's done to the DID community, stuff like Rain Man, like what it's made people think of autistic people. These are the kind of narratives which people still bring out and be like, oh yeah, I understand that because I've seen this one film. It happens, like, as much as people are intelligent and people can use critical thinking, it does happen. So that's why I wanted to address this. Especially with a topic which is not well known and is not covered very often within media. It's important to, like, when these kind of things do come out, just talk about it and educate, which is what I'm hoping to do here today. And we can't assume that every viewer is going to critically appraise everything they watch for, is this realistic? Because why should they? It's entertainment. They're just enjoying the show. And this is the issue we're running into now with stuttering, in that almost every single representation of a stutter on television is shown in the same way, or the same couple of ways. And that is either that person stutters because they're not that intelligent, because they're not competent, or that person stutters and then they overcome it. And this is the narrative which Bridgerton is falling into. Because the constant narrative we're seeing within Bridgerton, and even in the real world, with President Biden, we're seeing people who stammer being praised for overcoming and for passing as fluent. But that doesn't mean it's not damaging for the rest of us who aren't able to do that. And the idea that that we are not of value until we pass as fluent is inherently damaging and inherently ableist. It assumes that people who are covert are happy with their speech and are comfortable in their speech, and they're not. Most people who are covert, who I know, are just as focused on, and in fact, in some cases, even more unhappy with their speech than people who accept their stammers. Because they're constantly thinking about it, they're constantly worrying about how they're going to say something next and whether or not they will stammer when they do it. And that's no way to live either. Because here's the thing, they haven't cured themselves. They've just learned to pass to meet societal expectations. And that is fine if that is something that they want to do. However, we cannot keep pushing this narrative of, oh, they've overcome and they're fine now. Because they are not. They may be fine with their stammer, but they're putting in so much effort and so much work, and that is just being cast aside as, oh, you're fine now. And we need to educate more about this type of stammering. And I would love to see Bridgerton use this as an excuse to educate a bit more on that. I know they have a diversity team behind this show, so why not bring in some people who stutter to actually contribute and to help? I'm going to leave that rant here for now. That was far rant.
So there we go. I'm going to open things up to the panel here just quickly as we get started. Have any of you watched Bridgerton? Are you Bridgerton fans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what did you guys think? Because I've seen more of Lynne's video there than I have of Bridgerton, but what I loved about her video was it wasn't attacking. It talked about the positives of the portrayal and the potential negatives. So what did you guys think? Were you pleased to see someone stammering, or were you reticent and ready for it to be a bad thing?
I think what my frustration with Bridgerton, and it happens a lot in media, is that something traumatic must have happened to you to have a stammer. So on Bridgerton, his dad wasn't a nice man, so that made him stammer, and they portray it as he's got away from his dad, he's grown as a person, and he's overcome it, like Lynne said. And I think my frustration is, and I've had it said to me, and I'm sure we all have as stammerers, oh, you must have had a trauma as a child or something. So I do think that Bridgerton did do a good job of maybe including a stammer and bringing awareness in it, but not such a good job on blaming his dad for his stammer and a trauma that causes it, and kind of going with that stigma of nerves type of thing. Yeah.
And what about you, Lydia?
I think I'd be quite similar in that I was happy that there was, a story about someone who stammered, but we, very much what Lynne was saying. I've heard that over and over again when people say to me, oh, I didn't realize that you stammered. You must have done a lot of work on your stammer. And it's this idea, well, actually I do stammer. I'm constantly thinking about my speech and what I'm about to say and whether it's going to come out right. And it also, you know, that so Bridgerton fell into that trap of this person's worked really hard on their stammer and therefore don't stammer anymore. And we as stammerers get really annoyed at that, and that is why, pretty much.
I completely agree, and Lynne talked about it as a kind of, it's giving the impression, oh, if you worked a bit harder on it, you'd be over it. Yeah, if you worked a bit harder, you'd be an astronaut, but you're not, and you didn't. So it shouldn't be our lifelong goal to get over a stutter. It's great that there are people who put a lot of work in. I know for certain acting roles, I put in extra work because if the character hasn't got a stammer, then it is what it is. But yeah, it shouldn't be looked upon as our duty as such. Chantel, what do you think the impact is of either a lack of portrayal of stammerers on TV or how they are portrayed on young people, on yourself over the years?
Yeah, so I think for me, since I'm female and I'm Black, I think I can say I don't think I recall that I've seen someone on TV or in film that I thought, okay, yeah, that they're exactly like me. But I would say it does help because my speech has always been very over, and so I can get weird looks or, oh, what's wrong with you? And I think it can help as it's something that increases awareness. But I would say that since we all have speech that is different, I think it cannot help if, say, there's someone on TV that just has one block and then they don't have any more. Start again. Compared to if you're someone that just has lots of them, one after the other. And I think that if those of us that do watch like TV and film get used to that, then that won't help those people that have lots and lots of issues with their speech, because it will then become more hard for them to understand why they are so challenged with having a stammer. So I think that that's something that we have to consider as well.
Do you also think that it's a cruelty of existence that everyone I know who's got a stammer struggles with the word stammer? Isn't it just the cruelest of ironies that every time I'm introducing it, I'll try and explain to someone I've got a stammer, and then I won't need to explain because just trying to say that always seems to trip me up. But yeah, I completely agree there, and it's so, I can't even imagine the amount of levels you could have felt disconnected from TV because, number one, so many male characters, number two, so many white characters, and number three, fluent characters. So there's so many hurdles to kind of go, oh, I can relate and connect to you. Paul, what do you think with the representation of people with stammers? I think focusing now more on fiction, on where it's kind of in the control of a writing team, a production team. There's so many people who could do something about this and decide how they go about it. How do you feel things are represented at the moment?
Well, following up from everybody else, the representation is wrong. Yeah. Fundamentally wrong, because as Lynne said, as Chantel and Rhian said, there's only in the arts, there's only one way of stammer. There's repetition. Well, two ways. There's repetition or there's blocking. Certainly, my stammer is a lot of it is internalized. How do you represent that? How do you represent that in film? How do you represent somebody walking? You're going to knock on a stranger's door for whatever reason. How do you represent 5 minutes before you knock on the door, practicing what you're going to say, begin to sweat because you don't know what you're going to be able to say? How do you represent the fear of not knowing what is or isn't going to come out of your mouth? So you're absolutely right. The representation is very physical, very vocal, and stammering isn't always vocal. Not for me, anyway. Think about the iceberg analogy.
Yeah.
That massive bit that you don't see, that massive bit that nobody sees. How do you represent that? I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's a rhetorical question, but
I think, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's when we later on in the discussion we'll talk about potential solutions. But one of the things I think is a legitimate one is casting people who have stammers in these roles, because as you say, you can't really write it into a script without falling into obvious stereotypes, because it's here's the bit where they're nervous. Again, I've never seen a stammer in a relaxed situation on TV. I stammer all the time when I'm relaxed. It's not just a nervous thing. So we see the big dramatic ones that are part of the story, but we don't see that I'm casually having a chat. Oh, I happen to stumble over that word.
Exactly. But if a director or somebody was to cast a person who stammers, they may go for half the movie, half the program fluent.
Yeah.
So what does the director do then? Excuse me, you've got to stammer more.
Or that's what's interesting, and not to talk about. Let's talk about me. But I was in a BBC thing earlier in the year, and I didn't know that I'd stammered in one of the takes, and they happened to use that take. And that meant the world to me, because the character didn't have or it wasn't in the script that they had a stammer. So on the TV show, my character stammered. It's never referenced. It's never talked about. It's not part of his character. And that's, I think, how you represent stammering. It doesn't have to be, as Rhian said, a dramatic childhood story. Here's the big key plot point. It can be just this person happens to have a stammer, and you might address it at some point, but it's not here's their key story arc. They've got everything else going on, just as a gay character shouldn't be just gay, and a black character shouldn't be just here's the black character in this period piece or whatever else. There shouldn't be tokenism in that way. There should be just this is part of life.
I think sorry, Rhian.
No, it's all right, Paul. Just to touch on your point, Paul, as well, I think it can go the opposite way. So when I went on BBC Breakfast News to talk about Costa Coffee, like you've mentioned, you're not in your natural environment, and as a role of PR and communications manager, because I do that day in and day out, and it's my role. I kind of act my role. So when I was on the red sofa, I didn't hardly stammer, and I got a lot of hate on social media for going on the news to talk about stammering and not stammer. So I think it can go the opposite way as well. So it's how do you get that balance?
I had that exact thing on the first video campaign I did with stammer, because I'm so used to, if I'm at work, I've learnt my lines, I'm not going to stammer. And Jane even said it, or no, it wasn't even Jane, it was someone else on the shoot, was kind of like, we got towards the end and we're like, not really stammered much. Is this going to be like? It's something I brought up as well. It's like, is this going to be a problem? Because I don't want to fake it, because that would be as crass as getting someone who doesn't stammer to fake it. But it was. I remember thinking, this is going too smoothly, as like literally too smoothly. So it's a really weird one. There's someone.
Can I just say something on that? So I get that every day in work, because my conversations with people are pretty much, they're fine. We may stammer a little bit, but it's when the camera's on me, when I'm interviewing people, is when it just comes out to play, is how I like to discuss or describe it. And the amount of people then aren't expecting the stammer when it starts is then nearly what makes it an issue. I did a thing recently where I interviewed the England's netball head coach, and my producer, like, we had to drop the first link because of my stammer, and it was more, you could tell the frustration in her face, because she wasn't expecting me to stammer, but I did. So I get that, the whole am I stammering enough for people to actually, it's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. But are people okay with me stammering in certain situations and others? Because of the way it's portrayed in TV, it has to be one or the other. Has to be your stammer is, very, very, very constant, or it has to be non-existent. That's not realistic at all.
That's
we
why
know it's not.
That's why I think it's so hard to script and so hard for a non-stammering actor to play that, because how do you choose and where do you go? As someone in the chat, Paul Purcell, has said, has anyone asked any of the actors or actresses who stammer on film or radio what it feels like and how they thought about stammering and how did they do it? And it brought to mind Brassic, a TV series on Sky, which has a character who stammers, which I really enjoyed, because the first load of times he stammered, it wasn't really mentioned or addressed. I know certain people weren't a fan because the characters, I'm trying to remember not to swear, but the character's a bloody idiot, basically. But all the characters in it are idiots, so it didn't feel it was isolating. And I know some people from Stammer worked with the actor on that and worked with the team there, and that showed. Again, it was the first. I genuinely assumed that the actor had a stammer because I thought it was such an accurate and good portrayal. So again, going back to Chantel, do you think that's important, that we're not just saying we need these heroic characters who stammers? It's a variety of characters, right? It can be an idiot, it can be a hero, it can be a baddie, it can be a goodie, but that's what diversity is. It's not just here's the heroic person who's overcoming a stammer.
Yes, so I have to agree with that. So in the past, the only characters I've seen are those that are being humiliated, and that's not fair. That's not fair at all. I think there was a gentleman who posted as part of the campaign we have this year, and he spoke about the film It and the boy that's in that, and the fact that he had a stammer. And I think that the most important thing that we can have is show that there's lots of us from all different walks of life, and we can try lots of different things, and we may not always do a great job, but when we do, we're excellent. And I was thinking about this question in the week, and I'm not sure how much it would help adults to see stammering more in the media. But as a child, I know that I just thought there wouldn't be much to life at all, and I think that for lots of children out there that are for lots of children out there to see more of a depiction than just for fluency would be something that's really powerful.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I was thinking about the same question. I was thinking, for kids, again, it's hugely powerful to see that there are options and there is a life full of options ahead. But I think for adults, as much as anything, the representation of stammering on TV is important for adults who don't stammer. All of us are very aware of stammering. It's something that we can't avoid. It's not something that we need to be told about. But it's those who don't stammer, who don't know how to react, who don't know how to handle it, who just will find it jarring if they've not seen it regularly. That I think that's where that kind of representation could even help adults in that respect. Before we go on to the quiz, which will be up in a short while with the lovely Bex, our quizmaster, what do we think about things like open all hours? Stuff that's essentially all the stuff that we were talking about earlier that's from the past. Do we feel that should be removed from things like Netflix or iPlayer or streaming things? Or is that kind of unnecessary cancel culture or whatever the term may be? Has anyone got any strong views on that, on if we should get rid of these previously archaic representations or if they're part of the history, I guess?
I think I'm one of the older panelists, and I certainly grew up with Ronnie Barker and Arkwright, and I would suggest we leave it alone. We leave it where it is. It's a snapshot in time. And if I was thinking about this today, and there was a lot more in the show that was funny. It wasn't just. Well, yeah. It wasn't even Arkwright's stammer that was funny, because it wasn't a stammer. I mean, who stammers like that? But it wasn't. The fact that he got his fingers caught in the till, the fact that the shop boy kept falling off his bike, he climbed the ladder. All those things were funny. Not so much the stammer. And at the time, it was the only stammer around that I could think of. In the late 70s, early 80s, maybe. So. Why it was a piece of history. It's not made now. I don't think it would be made like that now.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. My kind of thought is maybe we don't need to air reruns because we've got a lot of stuff to put on TV. It's not a problem, but I'm perfectly fine with it remaining there. Because again, the thing with airing reruns is someone with a stammer, a child with a stammer could just be flicking around the TV and stumble upon something that they find jarring and not a nice representation. But if it's on streaming services, if it's available, I'm absolutely fine with that, because people who choose to go and look for it and go and find it can go and find it. And that is what it is. As you say, it's not the only part of the show. I think that's tough with a lot of things. I think it's rather than remove these things, we can put them where they are and hope that people watch them and address them with an awareness that it's historical, right? Rather than anything else.
Exactly. And I just noticed in the chat, there's a comment that I was going to come back with. Arkwright was a businessman. He ran his own business. He was successful. Yeah. He was a pillar of the community. So he wasn't that negative a character, really.
Yeah. I agree.
Sorry, I think I've got a bit of a lag on my internet. I'm talking over people, and that's
all good. You go ahead.
Stammer, isn't it? Just touching on your point, Paul, as well. My dad actually sat me down and we watched Open All Hours together, and we watched I was brought up on Monty Python as well, as you can imagine, and he kind of like did it in a different light, because I was the first person he'd ever known for a stammer, and he showed me Open on All Hours as that character, as a business owner, and he tried to do it as inclusivity and say, look, there is people out there. Yeah. Like, he kind of lied to me, bless him. He's like, look, there is people out there who can own shops and stuff. So I don't think it's fair to just take that away, because there is positives in it as well. Even though now I'm older, I watch it and I get it a bit more. But as a little girl, he like span it in a positive light type of thing.
That's perfect. I love that. There's comments in the chat from Kim and from Lynne, and from Joe saying that, you know, leave it where it is. Well, we need to focus on getting modern representation to a good place. And it kind of brings us full circle to Bridgerton, because the interesting thing there, as Lynne addressed in her video, in the longer video, was that there are parts of it that an uncomfortable watch, and it's where it gets complicated and a complex subject, because the reactions to the stammer and the reactions by teachers in Bridgerton to the stammer and by other people like that are accurate to what they would have been in that period. So there's accuracy there, but we're watching it now. So do we have faith that people watching with a modern eye are going to understand that that's how people used to react, or are they going to take it on board as, again, as we were saying earlier, oh, it's a weakness, it's their thing to overcome, it's their challenge, it's their task. And I'm not overly confident on the general public in that respect that we're going to be able to go, right, well, obviously they're representing something from the past, and not let those things seep into their own thinking. So yeah, it's a complex one. Simon's saying we're not there yet, Pip. Yeah, I think I kind of agree. It's a tough one, but again, I think the solution there is just a little bit more input in the writing process, right? People from Stammer, people from other stammering associations being involved in that and saying, look, maybe I get what you're trying to do, but maybe if we just adjust it like this slightly, or reframe it or rephrase it, then we can still get those same conflicts and dramas, but have more of a modern feel. But for the last kind of panel discussion here, kind of want to talk about what we expect from the media and how do we get there. We touched earlier upon Brassic and them having someone from Stammer advising when the actor was working on the character and all that kind of thing. And that's a good first step. I guess, has anyone got any immediate thoughts on what we want from the media? Because we've all kind of agreed that we're not there yet. So what is it that we feel would be there as such?
From my perspective, I think, and maybe this is just because it's what I do in my role as journalist, but I think if we see more people in normal situations stammering, it's more normal to then see them on screen, as in TV programs or movies or things like that. If we start to see people in other roles, or hearing them on the radio, or as teachers, as shop, in all these different situations, then it's much more normal for people to, people are then used to stammering, and I think that's important. I think until we are in a world where people can quite comfortably listen to people who stammer, then it becomes more likely that we're going to be in characters in TV shows or movies. I think the key is making everyday jobs that people who stammer can go for and don't feel like they can't do that certain job. For me, that's quite important.
I think that's a great point. And I think we've talked in the campaign about TV characters, film characters, presenters. And it's only just occurred to me as you were saying all that, we've not really talked about the fact that half of my TV schedule, if I look at what's on, is reality TV. And that's the perfect opportunity to put people who have stammers in real life situations, and just have it not be a big deal. There's so many reality TV shows. I can't think of any other than Gareth Gates on Pop Idol now that had someone prominent in there who has a stammer. So yeah, I think that's a great point of, I think it's a combination of the two, right? Representation in fiction is really important because a lot of people will watch fiction that won't watch Educating Yorkshire or whatever, a documentary or something that's trying to educate and teach. So that representation is key. But it's kind of a catch-22 because as much as I'm completely behind this campaign, I don't know about you guys, but any time I've been with other people watching TV or a film and there's a character who has a stammer, I feel so uncomfortable. But it's because it's so rare, I guess. It's because I expect everyone to be thinking, oh, what does Pip think of this? Is this okay? Because that's the only, it doesn't happen often. So I guess that feeling would go if it was on TV all the time, right? Paul, have you got any thoughts on what we could do or what we expect? Again, it doesn't even have to be that we've got the solution. It's just, even if it's just here's what we want.
Well, I think you touched on the drama side. I think the casting directors and the directors really need to speak to people who stammer and understand. But for me, it's not so much the drama. It's the day-to-day. It's the news. It's the sport. Just to go back to what Lydia said earlier on about when she interviewed the netball captain, and she said, quite worryingly, her piece to camera was cut. Why was it cut? Why was that piece cut? Because she stammered, because there was a potential timing issue. And I think I'm not in the television industry apart from my very brief session with this video, but there must be timing on the news. There must be timing on sports programs, but we have to fight against this. We have to say, no, even if the interview is shorter with less questions because the interviewer or the interviewee stammers, let's hear it. It's all right putting it in a drama, but that's cut and changed around. When I was quite a bit younger, I got in touch with a radio station and I asked them if I was to ring in on one of your shows and I stammered, what would how would it be handled? And he said, oh, we'd probably edit it and cut it out. I was horrified. And now I'm not saying that would happen now, but there's the potential for that, and we must fight against being cut.
Yeah, when I had a radio show on XFM, it was pre-recorded, but the first thing I said to my producer was, look, unless we've got a major timing issue, don't worry about editing around my stammer or because again, as you say as well, there will be certain situations where things have to be how they are, but it doesn't have to be the norm. As you were saying that, I instantly thought of things like Soccer Saturday and those kind of shows where there's a load of people sitting around and they're cutting from this person to that one and it's all quite light-hearted. I'd love to see someone with a stammer on one of those shows because it doesn't also have to be a big dramatic thing. They cut away from each other all the time if they haven't got time and they have a laugh if someone gets something wrong. I'd love to see one person with a stammer in that situation where they're all comfortable with it and they can go, if they have to cut away, they can kind of say, we'll be back in a minute. Exactly. We've got to cut away, and it'd be a light thing, not be this big dramatic, we're making a big stand. It can just be comfortable.
And I think you touched on it there. A group of mates around having a laugh when somebody says something. people who stammer have a laugh too.
Yeah.
We we laugh at each other. We laugh
I kind of
at
wanted to
ourselves.
say that, but I instantly felt uncomfortable because
No,
we're
say
doing this
it.
official nice thing that I was like,
No,
I don't mind if people have a bit of a laugh and take the piss within reason, you know?
Exactly. As part of my job, I have to present, and I use humour. I don't make fun of myself. I would never do that. I make light of the situation, and I think that breaks the ice and allows people to talk to me. It shows a little bit of vulnerability. We were talking about that on another webinar this afternoon. It allows a little bit of vulnerability. It's not taking the piss, as you say. Yeah. It's just allowing, and to see that on telly. So, but just going back to the difference between drama and reality, I was thinking about parents. If you're a parent of a young child that stammers, and you don't know anybody who stammers, you don't know what's going to happen. You worry about the future. How is my child going to get a job? How are they going to get in a relationship, etc., etc. Until they see successful and real people on television who have, grown up with the stammering and got on in life and may understand that it doesn't matter, that's going to put their mind at ease, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. There's a message, as you were saying, that in the chat from Bo saying, growing up in Ireland, a leading politician overtly stammered and was frequently interviewed on the news and panel shows, and it was beautiful hearing it and to see how respected he was when Bo was dealing with seeing stereotypical hurtful portrayals in film and TV drama. So yeah, it can be a beautiful thing there. Chantal, have you got any thoughts on what we need to do or what we should be striving for?
So this topic is a very interesting one, and I just think that whilst if we see people in the media who stammer, it might help the rest of us feel more comfortable. I think it's just more important that we focus on being as confident as we can to turn the minds of those people who don't understand and who are ignorant around, because I think whilst it can start the conversation, I think lots of people are uncomfortable about trying to approach the subject of people who stammer in the first place. So I think it is a step in the right direction, of course, but I think there are also lots of people who would feel, oh, if lots of my friends watch this thing and it has a person who stammers inside and they aren't represented well, then it might just bring about a bit more misunderstanding. And yeah, I think I'm a little bit on the fence with this one, because I think a lot of it can come down to the individual and making them feel confident that they can tell people, their friends, their family, those people they work with, this is who I am and this is how my stammer is, it's how it presents itself. And so I think I get a bit worried sometimes when I hear, have you seen this on the TV and this person did this and it really helped them? And it's like, yeah, I've seen that, I'm aware of that, and I just think that where everyone is so completely different, I think almost the most important thing that we can try to do is just to make every individual feel as though they can express how their stammer presents itself and who they are and what things they think they're capable of. But to sort of wind back a little bit, because I think I said towards the start that when I was younger, I thought that it would be very difficult to do all things, whether it be jobs or to walk into a shop and say, I'd like this and stuff like this. And I think it would be helpful to see that when people who stammer do attempt to do things that they don't necessarily get bad reactions all of the time. And I think it's also helpful to see that even when things might go a bit wrong, and it's really, really challenging, that nothing bad's going to happen and the world's definitely not going to end. And if there was a way for those sort of situations to be shown on TV, I think lots of people, especially young people, would really benefit from that.
I think you're completely right. And as you said earlier on, really, it's about broad representation rather than just this thing. And we talked about Bridgerton. I can't remember who was saying, I think it was in Bridgerton, that it portrayed him being bullied as a kid or picked on for it and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that does happen. So it's kind of okay to represent that if we're also getting other representations, if that's not the only representation. So again, the negative reactions, all of us have experienced them. So I'm not against that being presented if they're also presenting an array of other situations rather than, as Paul was saying earlier, it being the big dramatic moment. And that's all we're seeing. We're seeing that big dramatic moment. They've got strings, they're representing the heart beating and sweat and pressure. Great, that happens. I'm glad you're representing that. But that's, as you say there, Chantel, that's not every interaction. That's not every day. That might not even be every month. That might not even be every year. We've all experienced it at some point, but it's not necessarily the only thing that happens. And that can be just as damaging for a young kid with a stammer to go, oh, so that's what life is going to be like forever, is it? And that's, yeah, it's a weird one. So what do we think on, because it's an interesting chat. We discussed this on the Stammer podcast recently. What do we think about people who haven't got a stammer playing someone who has a stammer? Because my thought is to give everyone time to think about it, because I realise I keep going to people without having given you any prep on what I'm going to ask you and going, what do you immediately think on this? Talk for 5 minutes. My thought is, I don't think every character in film that has a stammer has to be played by someone who has a stammer. But number one, they should definitely have auditioned people who have a stammer, and you should be seeing who's right for the job. And two, you should definitely have people involved. If like Benedict Cumberbatch is an amazing actor, so I'm not saying he shouldn't get a role because the character's got a stammer. Again, they shouldn't have cut the stammer out, as we saw. I would. That was the question I was most shocked about there, that none of the representations of Turing gave him a stammer. But yeah, I think if we go along the line of you should only have characters with stammers played by actors with stammers, then we'd just get even less characters with stammers, is the sad reality at the moment. So what do you guys, has anyone got any thoughts on where we go with that? Go ahead. Rhian, if you got any thought there?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we need to look at it. I agree there needs to be more representation in the media, but if you're talking specifically about actors, that's a job, and I think it does come down to the right person for the job. But then on the flip side, if there's characters that are in wheelchairs and stuff, the actors don't have to be disabled to play that role. So I think it's kind of a similar thing, really. I completely agree they should interview people with stammers, but if someone else who doesn't have a stammer came across better in that audition, that's not to say that they shouldn't get that. So I agree with you, to be honest. I think we need to look at it as it's a job role.
Yeah, I think the more important thing, rather than who's playing people who have stammers, it's who's playing characters who aren't written to have stammers. I think that's where the greater representation could be. A friend of mine who is limb indifferent, has a robotic arm, amazing actor, and she's had loads of big roles in like Marvel films and all sorts of stuff, but the role that meant the most to her was just a waitress, because it wasn't a waitress with a robotic arm or a waitress with only one arm. That was just, she happened to get it. And I think that is the greater route to representation, being able to, again, I'd love it. I have had a few roles where I've gone into the audition and said, do you mind if I don't get my stammer under control, kind of thing, because I think it would work with this character. I also need to mention that as Paul was talking earlier about friends having a laugh, the amount of stick I've had from my mates that within a couple of years of becoming a patron at Stammer, our main campaign is about more stammerers in acting and film and TV, and I'm an actor. It's like that. I didn't have any say in this. I didn't control this and start saying, can we do a campaign to get me more work? What do you think, Paul? Yeah, go ahead.
I think you said it earlier on in when you were talking, and you just mentioned it again. You had a character that didn't stammer, and you stammered, and it was left in. I think that is a far bigger win than having a character that has a stammer and he's the main focus, be it a positive or negative. I think just background people in the background stammering is a far bigger win.
It's completely surprised me how emotional I got, because I didn't know they'd gone for that edit, and I was watching it in isolation, filming a TV show in Canada, and it knocked me to the floor, kind of thing. I was like, oh wow, that I hadn't considered how important that was. It wasn't until it happened that I saw how important that felt. And I
think there's two. Somebody's just talking about it now in the chat. I think that there's it's almost a two-stage process. We've talked about not so much focusing on programs that talk about the mechanics or what goes on with stammering, but maybe we need to educate the public first. Maybe we need to educate fluent people for a period of time, and then go into the more, just stammering is what it is. Because to suddenly go from nothing to full on in anything is quite a big step.
But I guess it's a case of how we get there, isn't it, Paul? I think the two things can be hand in hand in many ways. In the greater representation on TV will educate the public more, but a few people have mentioned that acting is just a job. A coffee shop is a job. Chloe said earlier, I didn't get a chance to read it out, that she didn't get a job in a coffee shop because of her stammer, because they wanted fluency, and that's heartbreaking to read. So it's looking at all of these things as every job should have an option, to make it work regardless of fluency. I guess the reason to focus on presenting, radio, all these other things, is they're ones that can then show everyone else, and then it's that bit easier, if you know what I mean. It's hard to go to every coffee shop, for example, in the country and go, look, just so you know, you're not going to lose business because the person at the till is stammering. It might slow things down, but maybe we all need to slow down a bit, mate. Let's take it easy.
It would be great. It would be great to go to every casting director and say, why didn't you take that person on? Why didn't you cast that actor? But like you say, it's not realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
I've
got a list, Paul. If you want to start going through the ones who've turned me down, I've got a list. If you want to start asking them, you're more than welcome.
Well, I don't want to monopolise, but one thing you say, well, what can we do as people who stammer? Just taking it down a notch from the acting, from radio phone-ins, quiz shows, things like that. I heard Ken Bruce, Popmaster, a few months ago, there was a guy on there that stammered. No reference was made to that whatsoever. I was in heaven, honestly. There's the guys there. But we as a community, our tribe is going to have to start stepping up. We're going to have to ring into that show. We're going to have to go on radio shows, and I don't mean late night radio shows where you get heard by 3 people. I mean, you know, mainstream shows, and you know, put ourselves out there and say, this is my voice. Listen to what I have to say. I have as much right to be on this show as anybody else.
That's a beautiful point, Paul, because I think it's really easy with all big causes to get overwhelmed and go, what can we really do? And a petition, again, I want to really push the petition that Stammer currently have, because if we can get good support behind that, and we can get it in front of your Netflixes, your BBCs, all these different people who are pushing diversity in their productions, that can make a big difference. But equally, you can go on that direct, singular level and say, no, I need to ring into a radio show. And mate, that would have terrified me in my teens. Ringing, honestly, the best advancement in technology in recent years was being able to order a takeaway through an app on my phone rather than having to ring up for that exact reason. But that's my own discomfort. And I think you're right there. If we can push ourselves, then we can expect then we can start to ask more of others as well. If we're willing to go, right, I'm going to get in there and do my bit to get that out there and get my voice heard. That's a great point.
Yeah. How do any of the other panel feel about that?
I think I completely take your point. I think it's important that we kind of put ourselves out there, and look, I'm aware that my stammer tends to manifest itself in certain situations rather than in you know, my sort of day-to-day conversations. But I got into journalism 5 years ago, and I think every so often in those 5 years I have ruled myself out of positions and out of covering stories because of my stammer. And I've said to people a lot, oh, I can't read the auto cue because I'll stammer when I read, or I don't think I could do that on air because I'll stammer. And what I found is more recently, when I've just either had to do it but I've gotten to that stage in my career now where people are expecting me to do more stuff on air, that when I've actually done it, the world hasn't ended.
Yeah.
The world has not closed down because I stammered in an interview, or because I stumbled a bit in this link or that link. And although I've had people say to me, oh, you know, you stammered a bit during that, I'm just like, well, you know what? I have a stammer. That's just the way it is. I'm not going to be able to do everything as perfectly as you want me to, but it's perfect for me. And I think my takeaway from it is nearly that I put up the barrier, not the barrier of my stammer, of what if my stammer stops me from doing this, as opposed to other people saying you can't do it because of your stammer. And I think that's something that is quite important. While yes, I had a situation only a few weeks ago where a producer wanted me to cut a bit out because of my stammer. You will still get that for timing. My whole job revolves around timing. And you know, I have 2 minutes for this, I have 30 seconds for that, I have 45 seconds for that. But what I found is that I'm the one who often puts the barrier up and not other people. And I'm not saying that we all of a sudden have to go from maybe being a bit nervous about our speech to ignoring it. I'm not saying that. But often, if we can be willing to put ourselves out there, it in itself can sort of help the whole stammering community, if you know what I mean, if we can do that. And I think that's quite, that was my takeaway from particularly the past maybe year or so, in that when I've done more things on air, and again, this isn't a well done me, this is just that a takeaway from it is that I found that I was the one putting the barriers up. I was the one saying to other people, I couldn't do that because I stammer. But when I sort of stopped doing that, as I say, the world didn't end because I stammered.
I think that's perfect, and that's so well put. I have kind of a process I try and force upon myself with that kind of thing that's based on similar things, is thinking, right, I stammered on that radio show, but then thinking, and what happened the rest of the day? Right, after that I got a pizza. The pizza was good. They forgot my dip, but the pizza was good. Then I watched a thing on Netflix, and then you start to think, oh, it was just part of the day. As you say, the world didn't end. Nothing bad happened afterwards. It happened. I didn't like that bit happening, but then it stopped happening and the rest of the world happened. So I think that's a great point to kind of end on. So before I wrap things up and we go to the video of the new campaign, is there anything any of you guys wanted to get in or wanted to mention? I'm always aware that often when you do these things, you hang up and go, man, I didn't say that thing I wanted to say. So I want to just throw things open quickly to see if there's anything anyone wanted to get in before we go. No, everyone seems happy there. I love it. Well, thank you all, Chantel, Paul, Rhian, and Lydia. It's been an absolute joy. We're gonna, before we all go, I love that everyone's in the group here. We've still got a few more bits. We're going to quickly play the video for our latest the petition. So, George, I believe, shall I hand over to you to do that? Yep, there we go.
Signing my name on a petition going to change anything?
Sausage and lift off?
It won't stop billionaires flying giant metal penises into space. It won't stop overfishing. Or the conspiracy theories that Prince Harry is a lizard.
Поставь hashtag.
Or cure fantasy football addiction.
Sorry, mate. Working late again.
It won't make rent or sea levels go down. It won't prevent fuel shortages. Or make stale bread softer. And why would it? It's just a piece of digital paper you put your name on. But signing it will insist we hear stammering voices on TV, radio and film. Not just on International Stammering Awareness Day, but all year round. Who knows, it might make the world a bit better. For me, at least. I'm not sure about the fish.
There we go. Wonderful work, as said, from Paul and Dan and the guys who made that. We're going to end with some quick polls. A few of them are going to be ones that came up earlier. Obviously, we rely on donations, so you can donate to our fighting fund with the text message details there, 70085 ISAD, which is International Stammering Awareness Day. It's not a declaration of sadness. 10 ISAD and 20 ISAD to donate those appropriate amounts. As I said, we're going to end with some polls. A few of them will be questions we had earlier. We're not going to ask if you've seen our Not Just One Day advert, because that's now a resounding 100% yes, as we forced you to watch it. We tricked you, lured you here, then forced you to watch it when we had you. But I'll hand over to George to ask the rest of the poll questions, if that's okay, George.
Yes, no problem at all. Let me just get these up a quick moment.
George, confession there. I was on my page had the questions while you put up the donation screen, and then I came back and had to panic as if I knew I was meant to be talking about that. So I winged it back
No worries
there.
at all. No worries. So the first question is one of the same ones we had at the beginning. Is it realistic to have people who stammer regularly on TV, radio, and film? And while we don't want to point you in a particular direction, what we'd obviously love to hope is that as a result of this session, we've got more people who definitely think that it's okay for people who stammer to be on the TV. But do be honest, of course. Fab stuff. You know what? I'm very happy with that. I think on the first one, we had 1 or 2 people on, I'm not sure, and it's unrealistic. We've only got 1 person who said they're not sure, but everyone else seems to think that it's a very reasonable thing. Fantastic stuff. Ooh. You know, Pip, I may hand back to you as the polling option has decided to fail me and won't let me share the other questions, which is very inconsiderate of it. Oh, you're on mute, I'm afraid, Pip. Sorry.
I'm not good enough on my mute and unmute. Let's jump in the chat a little bit then. Have you signed our petition? First of all, that's the most important question I want to make sure we don't miss. If you haven't, Jane has posted the links several times, so if you can sign and share it as well, share it about your friends and loved ones. There's George sharing it there. Yep, I'm getting a lot of people who have signed and shared. Good work, Janice. Good work, Kate. Good work, Paul. Now, the really important question is, did you score more than 5 in our quiz? And be honest. Obviously, we're not going to be able to check you here, so I'm relying on your honesty. Did you get more than 5? Simon, just about. I like to hear it. Is that a 6 there from Lydia? That's a pretty good score, to be fair.
Not bad, not bad. Pat myself on the back.
7-ish from George. 8. Buffy and Gus got you. 8 is amazing. No, Janet, that's good and honest from you. Got 5. Some of it was before your time, Sean. I'm going to use that excuse as well and try and hold on to my youth there. Before my time, a lot of it, guys. Lynne didn't count a score 6. Pat has signed and got 8. That's amazing. I don't have a stammer, but I can say the only reason I've learnt about it all is from my beautiful partner. Shout out to Bo from Ireland, who we read a question out earlier. Non-stammerers need to be educated about stammering by general exposure to stammering on a regular basis. Completely agree. That's a great message, and that's exactly what we're trying to talk about here. So, yeah, Philomena got 4 because a lot of it was after her time. I like that. I like that answer. So, to wrap things up on a kind of a positive note, what's the best depiction of someone who stammers that you've seen, whether it be in fiction or on TV or radio in the real world? Even obviously fiction's the real, but yeah. Anyway, yeah. What's the best depiction you've seen of a stammerer or a stammer? I always remember finding out that Rowan Atkinson had a stammer, and that is iconic delivery of the name Baldrick was so punchy because of him getting stuck on the B, and that was hugely inspirational to me because it's like, wow, that's made it better. Another actor wouldn't have delivered it like that. It wouldn't have been iconic. His stammer has made that into something truly special. Colin Firth in King's Speech. Go on, Paul.
That's one of the beautiful things about stammering. We have so many unique, beautiful qualities, and thank you for picking that one up.
Yeah, that was exactly it. It was such an inspiration to me. It's why I'm so passionate about more of it, because I only heard that from someone. I never knew. It wasn't talked about on TV. So if I didn't know, I wouldn't have got that. But I love the character in Black Swan Green. It felt like a realistic depiction. And Felicity Baker, some great answers there. So thank you again, Lydia, Paul, Rhian, Chantel, Bex, George. and everyone who's tuned in. I'm going to hand back to Tim to wrap things up. Over to you, Tim.
Let me just get my video on.
There you are.
Oh, I'm back there now. Well, I think we should add to our charity mission the need to get Pip more work, and I think it would tie in well with the campaign.
I fully support this. I think that's a great campaign.
You know, the favourite character of mine on television who stammers is Patrick Campbell in Call My Bluff, which I suspect not everyone will have seen, because he was a delightful character. It was a perfectly natural stammer. He didn't try and hide it at all. He got some joshing from the other people on the teams, but it seemed a perfectly natural thing. And it, in a sense, we seem to have gone back from that in the last 20 or 30 years, which is a shame. But I too find it excruciating to see the clip from Fish Called Wanda. I think it's almost unbearable to watch. Look, I think fantastic and sincere thanks to Pip today for hosting this session. He's been absolutely brilliant. I should think he's absolutely exhausted because he's been at it pretty well all day. And here he is still advocating for us and doing a wonderful job. And we much appreciate it, Pip. You've been great. And can I echo his thanks to Lydia, Rhian, Paul, and Chantal for their input today as well. And hats off to Bex. Fantastic. Typing here, feeding there, looking at the poll results, feeding again. I mean, a wonderful job. How she does it, I really don't know. Before we go, a couple of important things that I want to repeat, really. People are asking, what can we do? Well, the first thing you can do is sign the petition, as Pip says. I know there are lots of petitions out there, and most of them are completely unrealistic. But I think our petition at stammer.org/petition is very achievable, because it reflects the spirit of the time at the moment. The media are already showing interest, and I think all they need is a shove up the backside to get their act together. So your signature's massively important, and why not ask family and friends to participate too? And finally, Stammer is a charity. It gets no funding from government, and we depend solely on donations. So if you've enjoyed tonight, and if you'd like to donate £10, for example, to help us to continue our work for people who stammer, please text 10 ISAD, 10 ISAD to 70085. That's 70085. Many thanks and good night.